Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Yesterday, I did a video called A Comics Gate Guide to SJW Speak, and I was going over the phrase, basically, we don't want you as an audience, and why and how SJW writers can actually say something like that. And I got a really interesting comment on it, and it was so interesting a comment. It was made by Crimson Mask, if I remember correctly. It's such an interesting comment that I decided not just to write another comment back to him to talk about this, but to actually do a video on it, because I think it's something that his comment brings out some things which everybody should hear, because not everybody goes to the comments. So his comment was broken down into two parts. One saying that fiction is a generic product and you got to choose your audience, and so they're not wrong in saying you're not our audience. But at the same time, he's saying in his second part that their audience, they see their audience as SJWs and they're writing for them. And I completely agree with the second part. I just did a video on that. If some of you might remember, it talks about Marvel's lifestyle branding is a way to bar you from buying comics, which basically I talk about how Sana Amanat is looking to sell to a niche market, and that niche market is no longer comic buyers. Their niche market is SJWs. And that's the way the entire company is going. So I did an entire video on that. I think he's completely correct. But as to the first part of the comment, it's yes and no, because he's talking about in his comment that they're not wrong when these people do this. They're picking a specific audience and a specific genre, and they're writing for those people. And that's what happens when you're a writer. Well, again, yes and no. As a writer, I'll have to tell you that the publication industry is set up in such a way to basically stop people from making this comment on several different levels. Now, again, I talked about in one of my videos why Marvel hates editors. I said that if you want to be a starving artist, that's fine. You don't have anybody edit your material. You don't have anybody help you publish it. You publish it yourself. You want to be a starving artist, you go out there and go ahead and do it. Okay, but what I'm talking about in my last video specifically was art as an economic thing. So that's why I was talking about entertainment. It's a part of economics. You're not a starving artist anymore. You're putting economics into this, because starving artist is concentrated specifically on art. But once you put that economic element into it, and you have to deal with other people and an audience that is actually going to want something from you, then there are several things just already preset in the publishing industry to bar you, to stop you, to keep you from making that statement. Go away, you're not my audience. And I'm only going to talk about two of them. Hopefully I'll do it quickly like I did the last video. And the first one is that if you're going to write for an audience and you want people to read it, you're going to have to go through an editor. Now, a lot of people have this sort of romantic notion about being a writer and think that all you do is sit there and write. I'm here to tell you right now that no, that's not the way it is. Maybe 20% of what you do is actually write. About 60% of what you do is editing and dealing with the editor and putting in their edits. And maybe about 20% would be selling the darn thing. So actual writing is the minimum part, the minority part of actually what you do. So you got to go through an editor. And if you have an editor that's any good, if you have an editor that's worth their salt at all, they're going to edit it at least twice. Once for content and once for copy. Now, a copy edit is what most people think of an edit as. They fix your grammar mistakes, your spelling mistakes, your sentence structure, all that kind of thing. But they're never going to get to that stage unless they do first a content edit, when they change around all the things that you have for content in your book, because it's useless to change the spelling and everything else until you actually have the book or whatever it is you're writing in a format that's going to be solid. So when they do a edit for content, their edit for content always boils down to one thing. This is not going to sell to a mass audience, or this is excluding some people from your audience. Either get rid of it or rewrite it. so that it does appeal to a mass audience. That's where edit for content actually boils down to. Now, it can take many different forms, but again, that's what it boils down to. It could be, this is confusing. It's going to lose some people, therefore you're going to lose some audience, therefore either rewrite it or get rid of it. Or it can be, you're putting your words into the mouth of this character that is breaking the established character that you already have. This is going to tick people off, therefore you're going to lose audience, therefore either rewrite it or get rid of it. So right there, before you even get to the publisher, you already have something in the system to tell you you're dealing with an audience. You're going to have to actually appeal to as much of the audience as possible and not tick the audience off, and certainly not drive the audience away, because if you can't even get to that editing stage where you appeal to the mass audience, you're not even going to get to the publisher. They're not even going to look at you. The second one is that when you get to the publisher, if you're going to actually work with a publisher and have any money involved in this at all, you're going to have to sign a contract. And part of these contracts are usually that you have to be a public face for your work. Now, you can't just be you. You can't just be, I'm going to be me, my own private self. You got to be a public face for your work. Now, again, that can take many different forms. It can run the gamut from, I'm going to have to go out and do book signings all over the country, to I'm an anonymous person. I'm not even going to use my real name. No one's going to know who I am. Doesn't matter. It can be anything from those and in between, but they're always geared towards selling the book in some way. And the moment that you do the opposite and say something like, you are not my audience, go away, not only are you contradicting that thing that's you've signed a contract for, but you can actually be sued by your publisher for saying such things. Your publisher will look at the contract and say, you can't say that. If you continue to tell people to not buy your book, we are going to sue you, because it's in your contract. You can't do that. So there are a number of things set up to stop a person, to stop an artist, to stop a writer from saying go away to any of his audience. And they might think it, and they might have it in their head that they have a specific audience and they want to drive some people away. But if they have that stuck in their head, it's going to hopefully get erased at the editing stage with the editing for content. And if they get past that and get to the publishers, then that's going to be erased by the contract that they sell. So they can think it all they want. It will probably stop them from getting published. But if they actually come out and say it, that's a completely different thing. Again, you could be sued for something like that. And the fact that these people are not getting sued or not getting stopped or not getting even chastised for doing things like this just points again to what I was saying in that video, that it's because this is a sick industry. Our comic industry is a sick industry because you have people corrupting the very idea of what the industry is and what it's supposed to do. They're introducing it into it a political idea, which they think that it should be a political industry. And it is making the industry sick because it's corrupting it. And that's what they're doing. They're corrupting the industry. Because, again, these things should not actually happen. And the funny thing is that you have people who are like Sana Amanat or Kwanzaa, and they're saying these things either directly or indirectly, that you people should go away, you're not our audience. They're in a publishing industry which deals with money. People should actually be stopping them from doing that. If it was a healthy industry, they should be stopped from doing that, but they're not being stopped. Therefore, it's not a healthy industry. So the people who are actually in the system where it's supposed to be that way are not actually following the rules. And yet you have someone like Richard Meyer who doesn't have to follow any of these rules because he's doing everything himself. If he wants to be a starving artist, that's fine. He's dealing with all of the publication himself. You know, he might want to do these things to sell more copies, but he doesn't have to. And yet he's the one who's actually following all these rules, when no one is actually telling him to follow the rules. No one is standing over him with a contract. No one is standing over him and saying, this is the way you got to do it. This is the way it's got to be. And yet he's the one who's following the rules. He's the one who's actually appealing to a customer base and building a customer base. That shows you how sick this industry is, how upside down it is right now, when the people who are actually supposed to be following these rules are ignoring them, and the people who don't actually have to follow these rules are the ones who are implementing them in their work. And on top of that, it shows that it is a sick industry because, as I said in a number of my other videos, that Disney is not stopping this from happening. And in my mind, and what I have argued in a number of my videos, is because Disney, if you look at their history, doesn't want to be a publisher. So they're either waiting for Marvel to die or are trying to kill it because they don't want to be a publisher. And therefore, they're just letting the SJWs have their way because it's killing the industry and they want it to die. And they're keeping the SJWs off of their backs for the movies, if possible, for as long as possible at the very least, and basically secluding all the crazy people in one room. And I talked about that in a number of videos. Why Disney may be purposely driving away their customers. Is Disney using Marvel Comics as a defense against SJWs? I've done a number of these videos. And that's what I can see happening because this industry is so sick. So that was a great comment. It gave me a lot to think about. I love it when people comment because, as I say, I put out these videos to give you guys something new to think about. So hopefully I've given you something new to think about. And you can hit like and hit subscribe to let me know if I've given you something new to think about. But leave me a comment and give me something new to think about. Challenge me and give me something new. That's great. Love that. So another shorter video. And I'm going to try to keep these videos shorter so I can deal with as many of these ideas as possible without taking up too much of your time. Because, again, I think 20 minutes is a little too much of your time for me to ask for every day or every couple of days. All right. I'll see you later. Bye.